Yes, hello and welcome. It's another Confessions podcast. Thank you for downloading us. Another audio array of terrible tales from the discerning, if sinful, Radio 2 listenership. This week's concise collection includes a bad beer brouhaha, a mucky manure mishap, some foolish footlight frolics, and a devious denture disaster. Not bad, an 8 out of 10. Who will you forgive? Here it all comes. Here's tonight, and I'm just going to give you a little warning if for people who are consuming food.
Do not listen.
Well, listen and just cope with it. I'm just.
Oh right, fine, yeah, lovely. The great
saying,
warning. Yeah,
it's about queasiness in general.
Okay.
Is that? I think. Okay.
Yeah.
Comes from Johnny. Thank you very much indeed, Father Simon and the Barmy Brethren. On hearing the description of why some people could look green at the gills on your programme recently. See Homework Sucks of previous shows, I was reminded of something that happened back in 1980. Nowadays, you can get a wonderful selection of beers, some clear, some cloudy, but all quite drinkable. Back in 1980, though, a cloudy pint was more likely due to be old beer, dirty faucets or sediment being sucked from the bottom of a near-empty barrel. In other words, it was bad for you. And so begins my tale. A group of us had agreed to meet at a large and busy public house in the centre of town, frequented by many students and young adult types, due to the low cost of the beer and some basic and cheap food. My mate Pete and a few others had received rather hazy and frothy glasses of ale from the barman, which Pete, after tasting it, of course, told him tasted a bit off. He asked if we could all have a different pint. The rather sullen barman informed us, in an overly aggressive manner, that we weren't getting any more drinks from him, the beer was perfectly all right, and we could like it or lump it. We knew where the door was. Customer service wasn't the same back in 1980, says Johnny. I then intervened and asked if he'd pulled a beer from the bottom of the barrel, but the increasingly irate barman pointed his finger at my face and repeated, "No money back and no free pints." Skint, and possibly too naive to know what was good for us, we supped up and then left. Some hours later, after getting home and eventually going to bed, a little queasiness was noted. I decided it was nothing, and within minutes sleep came. Hours later, just before dawn, I've rewritten this bit. The theoretical queasiness became fully fledged and full-blown queasiness.
Okay. Yeah.
You got that?
Yeah, we all know what's gone on.
Thank you. It has. Let's just assume you know what's happened at that point. I was off sick the next day, says Johnny, and didn't make it to work. I saw my friend Pete that night and discovered that he hadn't made it to college either and was also extremely pale, verging on the green. It turned out that he and some of the other guys who'd received the cloudy pints had been similarly affected to a greater or lesser extent, and it was then that Pete and I hatched a plan to demonstrate the evils of the demon cloudy pint and maybe exact a little revenge at the same time. A couple of weeks later, for some reasons, we hadn't fancied a pint for a little while, and before revisiting the source of our affliction, we each had obtained a hot water bottle. After arguing for what to fill them with, I decided upon vegetable soup, and Pete had lentil soup. We decided that revenge was a dish best served warm. So we heated our soup up in the saucepan, and after filling up, the hot water bottles were secreted inside our jackets. It was happy hour at the pub when we got there, and was very busy, with the usual mix of students and others sitting or standing around. After watching for a little while, we'd sussed that one of the barrels was getting empty, as one of the faucets was starting to produce frothy pints. It was then that we ordered. We managed to get our pints from the rather same sullen barman as before, and the plan was in action. The pints arrived, and we discreetly prepared ourselves. Pete called out in a loud voice, "Here, this pint is off!" "I feel ill," I shouted, and then, with impeccable timing, we both made retching noises and sharply pulled our arms to our stomachs, much as I am doing now, I notice, causing the now uncorked hot water bottles to expel copious amounts of hot soup with plenty of lentils and vegetables all over the pub counter. Suddenly, everyone in the pub had turned to look in our direction. We saw a few people turn a bit green, whilst others started to inspect their pints with cautious looks. It was at this point we decided it was time to leave, as did many others. And so we seek forgiveness not from the pub or its owners, who should not have allowed such liquid to be served on the premises, or from the sullen and aggressive barman who refused to compensate or replace what turned out to be very dodgy drinks, but from those unfortunates whose minds and bodies appeared to have reacted rather wholeheartedly and with such deep empathy to our little practical joke. Well, I'm amazed it got through, to be perfectly honest, but it did. It got through all the different committees that allow these things. We did take out quite a lot of detail.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, dear.
I'll do you an illustration shortly. Anyway, it's an interesting idea, cloudy pints. I had forgotten that actually if you had a cloudy pint, that could be a sign of something that was dodgy, and you don't want to have that. But that was interesting. Vegetable soup kind of option as revenge. What do you think, Sister Rebecca?
Quite resourceful to do that, isn't it, with a hot water bottle and everything. But I think a bit extreme. Could they not have just gone to the manager and said, your pint was off, we were sick?
Well, they tried that with the
complaining.
barman. The barman
I know,
threw
but
them
they
out.
should have. The barman was obviously not a very nice man. They should have gone more senior. I do feel sorry for the other people who were feeling a bit queasy as a result, but I do love a good joke, and I think that does fall into that category. So for that reason, I'm going to forgive you, Johnny.
Of course, but the pub would have filled with the aroma of beautiful soup as opposed to anything else. But Brother Matt hates
You don't
practical.
tend to spend much time smelling it.
Do you not?
No.
Okay.
In my experience. Having been a barman, there is nothing worse than punters going, oh, too big a head on my pint. Oh, it's a bit cloudy. Oh, is this from the bottom? From the bottom of the barrel? I've no idea. I can't see the barrel. The barrel's downstairs. Oh, is it the bottom of the barrel? No, I've had enough of punters thinking they know better. It's my job as the barman to pour the pints, and if you don't like it, go somewhere else. I'm with the barman on this one.
Was it actually you, the guy who told them to go somewhere else?
Definitely not me, before the legal people get involved.
No, it could have
Definitely
been.
not me.
Could have been.
Definitely not. But, so I am definitely going to not forgive, because it wasn't the barman's fault, it was their fault, and they made it all up.
This is Radio 2, and it's another Drive Time Confession. And into our collective, we welcome again the Dean of Deadliness.
A very, very good evening to you.
Thank you. Overacting already. Not promising. Frank it is who sent in tonight's tale. Thank you, Frank, dear Father Simon, and the ever-forgiving collective. My story goes back to the heady early 70s. I was a 17-year-old teenager with a part-time job working on a small local farm. I had many carefree days enjoying the open-air lifestyle. Many advantages to the job. The physical work was transforming a gangling teenager into a stronger, fitter youth, especially with the copious amounts of home-cooked food that was on offer every day. And the money I earned meant that I could afford some nice new clothes to impress the ladies and treat them to a milkshake at the local cafe.
They were the days.
Heady days, huh?
Would that have turned your head, do you think?
What, the milkshake?
A milkshake, yeah.
Definitely.
We'd have been happy with that in 1971.
Oh.
By far and away the best benefit was the wide variety of tractors and old cars that I was allowed to drive, most of the time totally unsupervised. Tractors in those days, Father Simon, were simple affairs, no power steering, freezing cold in winter, but glorious in summer. As well as the home farm, we also rented a large amount of land about 10 miles away. Because of the distance, any trip there took around 30 minutes along some winding but often quite busy roads. I'd always been told to keep an eye on cars behind me, and if the queue got too long, to pull over and let them through. The problem with that was that the queue would build up quickly, and I'd spend more time stopping and starting than actually travelling. After a few months, it became quite a game to see how many cars I could have queuing behind me. When I finally pulled over, then I started setting targets. 15, 20, 30. One day I've managed over 50.
I think I've been behind this man.
Anyway, I think that's almost certainly guaranteed no forgiveness from anybody.
No.
One of the regular jobs was transporting the manure from
Here we go.
Yeah, yes. It's taking a turn, this, isn't it?
paragraph 3, we get to the nub of the issue.
Yes.
Transporting the manure from our 40 or so dairy cows out to the fields. We had a simple system. Each day it was loaded into a machine that stirred the mixture, and when it was full, it was taken to the designated field and spread. Yes. The machine was called a rotor spreader, which sort of explains everything that you need to know.
Nothing can go wrong.
Produce a checklist.
It was a revolutionary machine in its day. It was like a barrel on wheels. To empty it, it was spun at a great speed using power from the tractor. This effectively flailed the sloppy mixture out of the machine and spread it over a wide area of the grassland. The faster the tractor engine, the greater the distance the manure would travel. This was organic farming at its crudest. The problem was, the faster the tractor engine, the quicker the spreader would empty. But the more erratic the spreading pattern became. Many a time a wall would be splattered, and occasionally an unlucky sheep would catch a flying lump of dung. One lovely summer's evening, I know you all know where this is going to go. One lovely summer's evening, I was asked to take the spreader out because it was full. Luckily, the field wasn't far away, so I reckon at full speed and using maximum revs, I could be there and back in about 5 minutes. It wasn't until I left the field that I noticed there was a small lay-by just down by the road, by the wall, and in it was a white car. Curiosity got the better of me, and instead of turning back towards our farm, I turned the opposite way and headed towards the car.
Curiosity?
Yes.
Okay.
As I got nearer, I saw it was a lovely, shiny, soft-topped Triumph Herald. Well, it wasn't a soft-top at the time. It was a fully open-topped car.
Oh.
And it wasn't white anymore either. It looked like the army had started to camouflage it with bits of straw and globby green lumps. It wasn't just the bodywork that had been splattered. The red leather interior had also had the same treatment. It was then I noticed the tall, well-dressed man with an attractive young lady on his arm walking down the road towards the car. At this point, I decided complete cowardice was better than taking any responsibility for my actions. Giving the tractor full power, I swept past the loving couple in a cloud of diesel smoke. At this point, the rotor spreader coughed and deposited its final payload at shin height.
Oh, I say.
Like that. Tasselled loafers, corduroy trousers, high heels and stockings, all ruined. I decided, it's not what he was wearing, this is... looking at this in the mirror, I decided to take a detour back, taking advantage of a track by the neighbour's farm, which was a rutted dirt track that led back to our place. It was passable to a tractor, but not to a low-slung sports car like the Triumph in case he wanted to follow. So at full throttle, I headed home and within 2 minutes had the tractor parked up and round the back of the farm. The incident had been pushed to the back of my mind until a week later when my boss talked to the neighbour. He'd told him a tale of a very animated, rather arrogant man who'd been banging on his door the previous week, complaining about his car and his clothes being covered in a foul-smelling mess. The angry man had been indignant and abusive, so our neighbour decided not to give him any information at all about the tractor.
Phew.
Was it you? My boss asked, knowing full well that it was, and barely managing to hide his laughter. Please be more careful in future, was his only admonishment, as he sent me off to empty the spreader again. So I need forgiveness, please, from a number of people. The man whose car I splattered, even though he was a bit rude and arrogant. The girl who was with him, for no doubt ruining a very romantic evening. And finally the neighbour who had to deal with a Mr. Angry and didn't tell on me. Plus, I think also the people who, when he was travelling slowly, everyone queued up behind him and slowed everybody down. Anyway, it's Frank who'd like, it's a good farmyard tale of a rotor spreader doing what a rotor spreader does best. What do you say, Rebecca?
Well, what were they doing in the middle of the countryside in high heels and tasselled loafers?
Oh, come on.
And corduroys.
You do
Entirely
that?
inappropriate.
You do
no,
that?
I wouldn't.
Yes,
and
you
I
would.
wouldn't have my soft top down on a white car in a lay-by by a field.
Was it there? Were they asking for
They
trouble?
obviously didn't know the countryside code or whatever it is. Anyway, I think that the man was rude, I didn't need to be, and arrogant, and he probably got what he deserved. So I'm going to completely forgive you.
Well, that's an interesting one. Reverend Deadly?
I don't think I will. I don't think I will forgive you, actually. The man in the car, I mean, I'm not surprised he was angry. His loved one was covered in muck and whatever. And the girl.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And as for I wouldn't worry too much about the neighbour. The neighbour was sort of looking after you anyway, so that was fine. But no, I can't quite forgive you. You should have been a little more careful, really.
So it's nicely balanced as we head towards the forgiving arms of Brother Matthew.
Which of us hasn't always feared this would happen when you're travelling behind one of these in your loafers behind one of these manure rotavator things, thinking that's going to turn on. I reckon they've got a button. They're just going to turn the button on any second now. That's going to come on. I'm with Rebecca on this one. If you're going to have one of those cars in the first place and then leave it in the countryside with the open top down as a big sign saying, "Look at me with my red leather interior. You deserve everything you get, sunshine."
Ladies and gentlemen, these are the people I share an office with.
I've had enough of people with their red leather interiors thinking that they own the job. Well, they don't. They're going to get covered in manure. It's all coming at you. It's coming at you now.
So if you wear corduroys and high heels...
Corduroys, high heels and red leather. It's a trifecta.
What?
It's a what?
Of manure.
Oh, okay. Tonight's comes from Sharon. Thank you, Sharon. Dear Father Simon, and the most gracious and generous collective. Well, I'm not sure about that because Dean Deadly is back in for a repeat performance.
I'm in a good mood today.
Almost certainly not guilty. My confession goes back to the mid-1980s. Simon, when I was a student... Yes, Brother Matt, says Sharon, this is a student prank for which I seek your forgiveness.
Well, it's fine as long as she's not an art student, then that's all right.
As a student in Manchester, I lived in one of the all-girl halls of residence, and every year we got together with one of the all-male halls to put on a play. Not being one to perform on stage, I got involved in the production side, and in my final year I had reached the lofty heights of business manager, although still got involved in the stage building and painting, that kind of thing. Given that the play was put on in the dining room at the Hall, we only had evenings and weekends for the cast to rehearse, and the crew to build the stage, put up lighting and sound, that kind of thing. Generally, the cast would start around 7 p.m. We'd have to wait until they'd finish, usually about 9, before the crew could start working. This meant many late nights for us guys. The cast were generally the artistic types. They read The Guardian and novels, and we muckers in the crew often felt that they were superior to us. So every year, we would play a little joke on them on the last night. In the year in question, it was my responsibility, as the most experienced crew member, to come up with an idea for this joke, and it is this for which I seek forgiveness. The play that year was Lady Windermere's Fan, which is a classic Oscar Wilde play, as you know. Why do you react like that?
Yeah, no, yeah.
Is that the standard exclamation?
That's what everybody does when you mention that. Yeah.
Okay. Lady Windermere's Fan by Oscar Wilde. There you go. At one point in the play, Lady Windermere and another of the female characters are discussing one of her sons, and she shows the other lady a photograph. Now, the props lady had found a lovely picture from a magazine ad of an innocent little boy to go in the photo frame, which had been used for the whole run. This was from a knitting pattern, I believe, which showed him smiling innocently at the camera in a lovely polo neck. It was this prop that gave me my bright idea. I would replace the photo with a picture from a very different magazine for the last night. The photo we decided on was of a man who'd forgotten his clothes.
Oh, can easily happen.
And who
Can't it?
and appeared to be having a rest on some bales of hay.
Agricultural magazine, was it?
No one would see this picture apart from our brave actors. So we get to the scene in question when Lady Windermere goes to the sideboard and picks up the picture, goes back to the settee and has a good hard look at the photo. So it goes like this. Now, I'm going to play the role of Mrs. Erlyn, and Rebecca, I'll hand you some words and you're playing Lady Windermere.
Okay.
Okay? Mrs. Erlyn, stage directions, takes the photograph and looks at it. I'm not surprised. He is charming. Then he goes over to the sofa with Lady Windermere and sits down beside her, looks again at the photograph. Oh, and so is your little boy. What's he called, Lady Windermere?
Gerard, after my dear father.
All right, there you go. Anyway, that's the scene. That's how it should have been. But actually, having looked at the forgetful man who tripped over the hay, they completely dried up, then started to giggle. I was in the audience that night, sitting with the head of the hall and senior staff from the university, and I slipped slowly down in my seat as the giggling carried on. It seemed like minutes, because it was. Other characters, Mr. Dumby, Lord Darlington, and so on, were waiting for their cues, but Lady Windermere and Mrs. Erlyn were now crying with laughter. Tears were rolling down their cheeks, and the play was completely stalled. And now the audience started to lose it as well, and pretty soon everybody was laughing, even though only the actors knew why. Eventually they pulled themselves together and carried on, although there was some artistic toy throwing from prams backstage later on. I'm not sure what happened to the photograph of the forgetful man. Father Simon, I seek forgiveness not from the cast, who needed to get over themselves, frankly, but from the audience, who'd paid good money to see a professional and slick production. I must have wondered what on earth was going on. Anyway, if you went to that production of Lady Windermere's Fan, which then degenerated for no reason because two people were looking at a photograph, Lady Windermere and Miss Erlyn to be precise, that is what they were looking at, and that is why they corpsed. Hence the title of tonight's confession, Wild Corpses. So Sister Rebecca goes next.
Did you say it's from Sharon, this confession?
Yes.
Because she said she was a guy. Anyway, I'm a bit confused about that.
I
but
think
anyway,
that's just saying,
us guys. Okay, get it. Right.
Guys.
I love this confession. I love the idea of the forgetful man resting on the bale of hay.
I think he'd had a tiring day.
Yeah, clearly.
He just
had to rest right there.
I think you do.
Yes. I think that the audience... Stop it.
Not like that.
I was just resting.
You were. Just do.
Like that.
Simon is resting very artfully. Yeah, I think the audience would have had a great time watching the cast break down in laughter. And for goodness sake, I mean, it was only a student production.
It was.
It's not like they ruined a kind of,
I just like, the thing I like about it is the fact that only the two actors saw this picture. It wasn't like it was a big reveal.
Exactly.
Well, it was a big reveal, but it was
It's a huge reveal.
Yeah, anyway.
Oh, dear.
I think it was a great idea, Sharon. You're completely forgiven.
Venerable Deadly.
Well, last night pranks are fairly common. I've trodden the boards myself a few times. So I think if you go to a last night of any production, you could be in for anything. So, and also the audience loved it. We understand that they
didn't know what they were laughing at.
No, but they had an enjoyable evening. So you are forgiven.
And remember, if you go to an Oscar Wilde production, remember to go, at various moments for no apparent reason. What do you think, Matt?
The beauty of this is the context, isn't it? Is because they've chosen exactly the right kind of picture to fit in with that particular dialogue. Superb. And the fact that no one knows, as you said, no one but the cast know what's in that photo frame that's causing them all to corpse. It's superb. Yeah. The forgetful man. I'm all in favour of playing jokes on the cast and get over yourselves or you're throwing your toys out of the pram because something's gone wrong. It's the last night. What did you expect? Exactly. Be thankful there's not a bucket of glitter hanging over the stage throughout the production. And also, if you go to, as Deadly says, if you go to a production on the last night, something's going to happen.
Hijinks.
Absolutely. So I definitely forgive them.
So look, it's Novice Nigel has joined us in. He's preparing for his miso steak, is it?
Miso truffle steak, yeah. It's a very quick grilling, which is handy. Let's see how quick.
Okay. So it's tonight's confession. Thank you very much indeed for this. If you miss any, by the way, the Confessions podcast, available for you each and every Friday. You don't have to miss a thing. Your confession to confessions@bbc.co.uk. This is from Clive. Dear Simon and the Thorough Three. I need to Not bad, is it? No. I need to unburden myself of a punishing guilt that I have endured for many a year. Like all good Welshmen, I've been a member of my local rugby club for many years. I had an intake of breath there.
Oh, yes.
Well, it's not really
No.
Most of the rugby-themed confessions don't actually get past the filtration process.
Goodness.
This one's slightly more unusual. I've been a member of my local rugby club for many years, but my story does not really revolve around rugby so much as a rugby trip with my rugby friends. They're often half just as
It's not getting any better. It's not getting any better so far. Stays on tour.
For many a year, says Clive, our annual fishing trip was a great day out, which we all look forward to, and this particular trip was no exception. The age group was varied, and the reason for me telling you this will become apparent as this tale unfolds. The age ranged from 18 to 70. The trip got off to a good early start and a stop-off at the local Greasy Spoon Cafe, providing the motley crew with a good lining for the day ahead. So we're already in the culinary thing. You know?
Oh, yes.
Yes, I thought you'd like it. On board the bus, despite the early start, a certain number of beers were consumed. This was a rugby trip, after all, and appearances had to be kept up. Never quite got the early beer thing, particularly.
It's always good at airports.
Oh, staggering,
Let's get to the
isn't it?
airport at 7 in the morning. Who wants a beer? Yes, please.
Once aboard the large mackerel boat, everybody was on top form. There was plenty of banter, and the sight of two chums standing at the front of the boat doing their Titanic impression will live in my memory for a long time. Although it has to be said that Nigel, with his 3 times broken nose, was certainly no Kate Winslet. Well, I'm sure he'll be reassured about that. So this motley crew were in fine form and full of cheer and beer. But as the boat sailed further into the very choppy waters, and the harbour appeared to be a dot on the horizon, some of the travellers were looking a little bit green, to say the least. With the banter now easing a little bit, in fact stopping altogether, one of the team, Doug, succumbed to the rocking and the rolling of the boat and decided to relieve himself of that fine breakfast that we'd all enjoyed earlier. I should have given a warning, actually.
Yeah, you should. Yeah.
Anyway, it didn't last long. Now, here's the thing. Whilst hanging over the boat and throwing the remnants of his breakfast into the waves, his false teeth also shot into the Irish Sea, much to the amusement of all on board. It's a kind of a hazard, isn't it, really? Whoops, they're gone. The laughter was relentless. Cries from Doug of, "My wife will kill me," filled the boat, and we laughed even harder. It was then that Bill, who also wore false teeth, had a great idea. If we distracted Doug, Bill could tie his own false teeth onto a fishing line and pretend that he'd caught Doug's teeth. We all thought this was a marvellous idea. Whilst I distracted Doug, the deed was done. A shout went out. "Hey, Doug!" yelled Bill. "Look what I've caught!" And with that, moved the rod over for Doug to view a set of gnashers hanging from the line, complete with seaweed and oily residue. He was delighted. We watched in utter amusement as he untied the dentures from the line, and despite uncertainty about the precise nature of the floating substances that we'd just been navigating through, and I realised I should have stopped him, but I couldn't, he actually popped the teeth into his mouth.
Oh, my.
There was a look of puzzlement as he felt around his mouth and licked his lips and prodded his tongue against his gums, and then a look of horror came across his face as he realised he had someone else's teeth in.
Oh, no.
He instantly spat them out and threw them back into the sea, shouting, "They're not my teeth, there must be a body down there. I've got a dead person's dentures on." Well, that was that, and we couldn't quite believe it. Bill looked as white as a sheet as he realised that the prank had backfired somewhat. The sight of the two of them arguing without their teeth and threatening to gum each other to death was priceless. Anyway, I asked for forgiveness from Bill for encouraging him to carry out the act and for continually laughing for the rest of the day rather than sympathising with my gummy chums. We have had denture confessions from the odd naughty dentist and dentist assistant, but that was a good combination, and we appreciate that. Thank you, Clive. For tonight's tale, Let There Be Gums was the title. Let's see what Rebecca makes of that.
That is absolutely hilarious. That is one of my favourite confessions ever, actually. The idea of the guy thinking he's got a dead person's teeth. Sorry.
Well, you kind of would if you've... How would they...
I know. I admire that prank very much. It was a very, very funny prank.
Yes.
I'm not sure that I would have thrown my teeth into the water just for a joke so I could fish them out and say they were somebody else's teeth. I'm not sure I would have done that. But great, you
run
well
the
done.
risk of someone chucking them away. Which
you do. And I think that was karma, wasn't it? That was definitely karma coming into play, that the guy who pretended they were the other guy's teeth lost his own teeth. So I just love the whole thing. The image is brilliant. So, Clive, you're forgiven because it was so funny.
Novice Nige.
Yeah, I love the idea. That's like Jaws 4, isn't it? But I thought when the teeth were going to come up, suddenly it was going to be like a shark attached to them or something like that, taking them as a bait. Obviously, it didn't. But great story. And I do feel badly for all Chunder, Doug and Bill, and Clive particularly. He didn't mean to do it. So definitely, Novice Nige is saying you are confessed.
And forgiven.
Yeah.
OK, so let's see what Brother Matthew...
The beauty of this is the fight, isn't it? That's the best part about all of this is him saying these are a dead person's teeth. I'm throwing them back into the sea. Well, you'd have killed to see the face of the guy whose teeth those were.
They're my teeth.
Hang on a second.
A dead body. That's a great line.
Joke's a joke, but those are my teeth.
Well, they gummed each other then in
Absolutely.
the fight.
That is superb. Yeah, definitely going to forgive. It's given me a massive laugh.
And that was our Confessions podcast. So now we need to know yours, please. And everybody knows you've got about half a dozen tucked away. It's confessions@bbc.co.uk. More next week. Don't forget to download the Weekly Mayo, available now and every Thursday. Thank you for your custom.
Simon